That is the most important setting in the whole game. If you get nothing else out of this, take that home with you, because that's very important. Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. I am Ethan and this is The Fast Farm. So for those of you that do not know, in the real world, I race 602 crate late models, and that comes into play today because what we're going to be talking about is the World of Outlaws dirt racing game and the settings that I run on the game. I see a lot of people on Facebook and a lot of people have asked me what settings I run, so I figured it would probably be easiest just to do a video on what I put on my steering wheel, and for the pedals, and for the game overall. To one, make the game as realistic as I possibly can, and also to make the game as enjoyable as I possibly can. I do want to say it may be a little bit subjective, because how I want to run my car is going to be different than how someone else wants to run their car. But essentially, I think that these settings are, to me, as close to realistic as I could possibly be. The car actually, it feels really good, and as far as driving it goes, it don't feel bad as far as being close to what it actually feels like to race a dirt late model in the real world. That being said, this is going to be mostly around dirt late models because that is pretty much all I drive on the game. But I've tried it with sprint cars and stuff, and it feels pretty good too, but I've never raced a sprint car in the real world, so I don't really know exactly what that experience is like. But the steering wheel for this is still, these steering wheel settings I think are pretty good. I would also like to say, if you have any suggestions, if you see something that I'm running that you think would be awesome to try, I am totally down with that. I would love to try it and just see how it works for me. Especially when we get into the steering wheel settings, I've tinkered, I've played, and this is as close to real as it gets for me. But I'd be happy to make alterations if you think there's something that I'm missing that would make it better. So without further ado, let's just hop straight into the options. Alright, so first is going to be the gameplay settings. I had the difficulty preset set to expert, but it doesn't matter because you can kind of alter that, and I have altered that. A lot of this stuff is custom, so it doesn't necessarily go with what the preset settings are. Transmission automatic, obviously. Car identifiers, position and name. I haven't messed with that at all, but yeah, okay, so just position and name. I'm good with that. Car shake effect. I think they want this on 80 in the presets, but I turned it down to 20 just because it didn't seem like something that mattered. It just didn't really even make sense to me. I never really felt the car shake effect, and in the real world I don't notice a car shake effect, so I turned that sucker down to 20. I could probably turn it all the way off and be just as fine. Wheel-to-wheel contact, like I said, I don't race sprint cars a lot. I don't know if this plays a whole lot into late models, but I run it on 15. I think that's what the difficulty presetting wanted. I don't really know for sure. I just run it on 15 and I haven't had a bit of problem with it. AI difficulty is custom. I have it set on 100. I'll go down to about 98, 99. It just depends on what kind of afternoon I'm having, essentially. But the highest it goes is 105, and that's legend difficulty. That's when you are eligible for a legend difficulty medal. 104 to 100 puts you in the expert category, and then so on and so forth. So I keep it around 100. That's pretty competitive for me. I'm not the greatest at the game. I'm not the worst either, but I can win a feature on 100, or I can finish 10th, 15th in a feature. It's pretty wide range. I like that a whole lot. Damage, I run full damage. I haven't seen that damage does a single thing to the car in the game. I see some visual effects, but ultimately, as far as the car's performance, I haven't noticed a nickel's worth of difference, whether you tear the nose off the sucker or not. Of course, you can't actually tear the nose off of it, but you can damage your aero, but I haven't. As far as the performance goes, it's kind of, maybe I feel something. I'm very torn. I don't know. Race length, I run it on 100. I want the full race. I'm looking for realism, so I want the full deal. As many laps as you can give me that are realistic. Now, there's a 200%. That's stretching it. So at 200%, I think there's some like 60 lap features that I've been in. I don't want 120 laps. I don't know of a 120 lap dirt late model feature. 100% seems to be the perfect amount for long enough of a challenge. I want a long race because if I'm in the back, I want to give them a chance to mess up. Or if I'm in the front, I want me to have to mentally focus enough for, that full length of time. Flags, I run all on strict yellow. Some people have complained saying that, you know, they get too many cautions or they don't get enough cautions. Ultimately, I think that's realistic because in some races you're going to have a ton of cautions, and in some races you're not going to have that many cautions. So I haven't noticed a reason to adjust it once we get into some of the AI settings, but you know, that's one thing you can, I would tinker with it in the AI settings, not here. I would run everything on strict yellow. That way, you know, if you spin, you're definitely going to get a caution. Now let's switch over to driving. This is on expert. That's no assist at all. If you have a steering wheel, I would not really suggest going any less than hard. I would just grind it out until you figure it out on hard. I think this is just way too many assists. Now, if I'm running on a steering wheel, I definitely want that wall avoidance pretty hard because it's just so fidgety on a controller. I think I may have misspoke there. But if I was running on a controller, I would want wall avoidance. I would want to come down some. But if you're on a steering wheel, I think you need to start it hard and just work until you figure it out. Now, once that's being said, you can kind of wean yourself off the stability help in the custom. Go to custom and set it on 10, 5 until you're ready for expert. Next up is the AI settings. I do have a few tweaked in here. So I'll go explain those now. So skill range, I haven't messed with. Stability is one I do mess with. So this affects how stable the other cars are when you make contact with them. It says that a higher value allows you to drive more aggressively without consequence. Well, here's the deal. So run it higher, because if you run it on 50, if you barely hit someone, that car is going to go around. It's really annoying and not realistic because I've talked about this in other videos, but spring steel comes into play. On a real race car, there is, some people will use aluminum, but it doesn't really, you're constantly beating that back out. It's best to use spring steel. It looks like like a 1 by whatever piece of aluminum. It connects the frame to the body panel, and it, like it says, a car can get into you and bend your fender in and it will pop back out. There's some give there. So if someone gets into your quarter panel, there's going to be a little bit of give before the car itself is going to spin out. That's why I run it on 75. And that's also why I run impact forces on 25. I was finding that other cars were hitting me just barely, and the car was losing its mind. The steering wheel was blah, all this crazy stuff. And it's just not quite realistic. We can bump into each other. We can make contact with each other, and the car doesn't necessarily go crazy. I've found that 75 on stability and impact forces at 25 is perfect. I'm really happy with those, and I'll probably never tweak them. Qualifying difficulty, I have not changed. I find that qualifying is plenty hard enough. It's fine. AI cars in practice. Now, this is one I do recommend changing, just because when you're practicing, you don't really want other cars on the track. Now, I know in the real world you can hot lap and there's other cars on the track, but in the real world, you know, there's 4 or 5 cars and we're all spread out, and we shouldn't ever really come into each other's life. In this game, you'll start off practicing, and then Joey Baloney will start off practicing, and it's just, the whole thing's just kind of broken. So turn the AI cars off. If you want to be against other cars, go race. Turn your AI cars and practice off. That's what I do. Now let's get into the thing that you're probably here for, and that is the actual settings for the steering wheel. I don't know if I've mentioned this, but I run a Logitech G29, and this is the only steering wheel I've ever owned. This is all I've ever known, and I can tell you that I'm plenty happy with it, and these settings make things muchos buenos for me. So shift type, paddle, I don't shift, so it doesn't matter. All that stuff doesn't matter. Force feedback, I run it on 100. Now, I've seen some people say it's too strong, it's too aggressive, whatever. It's very realistic, I'll tell you that. The steering wheel in a real race car is going to be aggressive. It's going to be hard to hang on to. And I want to feel everything. I want to feel the slightest little bumps. I want to feel the tires going across the track. So the effect strength being on 100 in this game, to me, is the only way to go. I have heard that in other games, if you run it on 100, the steering wheel will break your wrist. And I haven't felt that at all. I think it's very manageable and very realistic to run it on 100. It's not a hardo thing. It's just, you can just feel everything, and it's realistic. By the time you get done with 60 laps, you should be tired, and running the effect strength on 100 adds to that. Impact effects, I run those on. Obviously, I want to be able to feel in the steering wheel when someone hits me. Centering spring. This is one that I didn't initially run. I didn't have it on because race cars don't have a centering spring. If I turn left, it's not going to go right until I turn it right. Someone recommended me running the centering spring, and I can tell you that I love it. Because there's constantly pressure on the steering wheel. Without it, you may be going down a straightaway, and the steering wheel feels like a noodle. If you turn the centering spring on, it's constant pressure on the steering wheel. I like that. I don't go into the corner and let it fix itself, like, you set the car and then I don't do that. I don't think you can do that. You are constantly steering the car, even with the centering spring. It's very nice to have on, and it gives you that extra feel of a real race car. Dead zones, I do not mess with. I don't see a reason for them. The only one I would even consider would be the brake, because sometimes I do rest my foot on that brake, and I don't want it to be enough pressure to where the brake will actually engage, so I would turn that up to 5, 10, 15, whatever the case may be. But for the most part, 0 is fine. So I'm not going to go into all of these, but I will just show you what I run. Steering range at 70, steering sensitivity at 45, brake range at 60, and throttle range at 0. These are the throttle range. As soon as I'm in the gas, I want to be in the gas. And that's the way that it is. The main one that I want to talk to you about is steering range. I have it set on 70, and that's because I went to my actual race car and I turned the steering wheel to where that was it. Like, you couldn't turn it anymore. And then I came back in here. I tinkered with it, so it's set at 70 right now. We hit the options button to test sensitivity, and we'll turn that steering wheel. And that's, if you go out to my race car right now, it's jacked up in the air, and you can take the steering wheel and turn it, and that's where it's going to lock. That's where the rack will allow it to go. So that is how it's set right here. So I don't know what it starts at, probably 50, but just to show you the extremes. So if you go to 0 and do it, you're maxed out right there at, 11 o'clock and 2 o'clock. It's not realistic. That's not how a real race car is. And I would assume that would be just a nightmare to handle. And on the other end of the spectrum, if you go to 100, you're going to be turning for quite some. That's actually that's close. That's not realistic. That's a lot of steering, but I'm going to be honest. I don't hate that, but mine stops about right there. So anyways, you may not have a race car to go test that with, but I do, so I run it at 70. And now that I sit here and look at it, I may even play with that just a little bit more, but I can tell you so far up to this point, 70's been pretty realistic. Steering sensitivity, brake range, all that stuff you can mess with, but this is what I run. I do like my brake pedal to be stiff. I want it to feel like it is in the race car, and it's the stiff pedal, right? Your brakes are stiff. However much pressure you apply, that's how much brake you're going to get. I couldn't, even with the settings, I didn't really like anything, but I did make a modification to the actual pedal. If you'll watch my review of the game, I actually show you, I have a link in the description for how to find the video that changes that. If I need to, I'll put it in this one as well. I may just go ahead and link it somewhere over here or something. But anyways, that's one modification has definitely changed my brake pedal and made it way more realistic. The only thing I'm finding now is that I halfway wonder if that foam has been pressed and stretched out too much. But anyways, that's irrelevant. Here's the settings that I run. I love them, and it's not perfect, right? Like, it's not like it's not exactly what the real world would be like, but I gotta be honest, it feels pretty close to the real deal. All right, so this is the last setting that I'm going to talk about, and I'm just gonna back all the way out accidentally. Let's get back into this. Okay, so we're gonna go over to not race format, audio. Real quick, I turn all the music off. I get tired of the music, so I turn the music off. Finished music I leave on for some reason. I'm not sure why I do that. I could probably turn that off and be just as happy. I turn all these things down, so if you stream, you're going to want to be able to hear yourself, or the people are going to want to hear you, and not the race car the whole time. Luckily, one of my people that were watching my stream made a mention of turning these things down and then just turning the volume up in my headset so I can still hear the car. It works perfect. They can actually hear me when I'm talking now. But this is the most important setting in the whole game to me. Turn the announcer off. I love Johnny Gibson just as much as the next guy. He is the GOAT. Make no mistake about it. Johnny Gibson is the best in the business. But he gets on my last nerve in this game. I get so tired of hearing the same stuff over and over and over. Especially the quick time when you're not even setting a quick time. Like you haven't, it makes 0 sense. It makes me cringe to death. So I turn him all the way off. I think that's the most important setting in the whole game. That is the most important setting in the whole game. If you get nothing else out of this, take that home with you, because that's very important. Okay, that's it. That's the settings that I run. If, like I said, if you see something on there that you're like, hey, you can try this, I'm happy to try it. I'll give it a shot, no matter what it is. But that's it for me. That's pretty much. I love it. I love the game. I love the way the car feels. It's very much so. It's not the perfect practice session for me, but it is fairly close. It feels very good, and I don't know. I think you'll like those settings if you're struggling to find your happy place. If you haven't already, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. If you're subscribing, turn your bell notifications on. I stream multiple times throughout the week, so you may come hang out with me and chat it up. We'll talk racing or whatever you want to do. But that's it. I love each and every single one of you, but now I gotta go.